We're on Perek Ches, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Yud Beis. Ches Yud Beis in Eikev. Page. Page Ches Yud Beis. Page 984. So yesterday we were talking about benching. Ve'achalta v'savata uveirachta es Hashem lokecha. Then they say tongue in cheek. For most people it's ve'achalta, you'll eat v'savata, and then uvarachta, and you run away. Instead of ubeirachta. Uvarachta, you run away. So we're talking about benching. Yesterday we had mentioned how benching, the Sefer Chinuch mentions that anybody who benches, the Sefer Chinuch has a tradition that they'll never be lacking an honorable, respectful form of parnasa, which is a good deal. It's a good deal. So I saw, when I was in Kollel, I saw this, I heard a shmooze, a muster shmooze in Kollel. He told us that, the Rav told us that when we bench, we should give ourselves a minimal amount of time to bench. We should bench for 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. That's what he told us. Come sit over here, makes it easier for me. Come sit over here on the side of the room. Yeah. Come on the side of the room. Betsy also, now you're good. I say, come sit over here on this side. So he told us to give ourselves a minimum of 3.5 minutes to bench. And after we finish 3.5 minutes, we're not allowed to do anything. If we finish before 3.5 minutes, we're not allowed to do anything. We're not allowed to look at a safer. We can't answer the phone. You have to just sit there and train yourself that you have 3.5 minutes to bench. That's what he told us. So I thought 3.5 minutes, what's a big deal? So I took a bench for that night. I went home and I got a nice kavana to get benching. I brought down flames and angels with my benching. And I looked at my watch, 2 minutes, 45 seconds. That's how fast we bench. And that was with kavana. Boy, you can imagine before that. You can imagine before I was thinking about it. And then I saw 3.5 minutes is too hard. So I cut it down to 3 minutes. To this day, I can't do it on Shabbos. That's why I have a watch with a stopwatch. One of the main reasons I have a watch with a stopwatch, I put my stopwatch on for benching. And I've been doing this for many, many years, and I still will find that sometimes I bench, and then I got to sit there at the table for another 15 or 20 seconds because I haven't got to my 3 minutes. If you do the first paragraph the first paragraph is the key. If you get the first paragraph with, under control, so then you generally will make your 3 minutes. And the irony of it is that benching is the d'oraisa. Benching is the most. I saw one of the Gedolim said that we should have as much kavanah in benching as we do in Shemona Esrei. 19 brachos in Shemona Esrei. Benching is, what do you call it? So there are those that say you should bench out of a bencher. That I won't tell you. I feel that sometimes I bench better when I don't use it, but when I keep my eyes closed. When I daven, I usually use a sitter. I find the davening for Shemona Esrei, I do better with a sitter than with my eyes closed. I've gone back and forth. I tried back and forth. I feel that I do better with a sitter. Benching, I found that I do better with my eyes closed. But again, the key is that first paragraph. If you hit the first paragraph, you should be able to make the 3 minutes. That's an important thing something very important. Okay. Now, in Pasuk Yud Gimel, skip to Pasuk 13. So then he says like this. The Torah is going to go into this Pasuk. It starts with Pasuk Yud Beis. Pen tochal v'savata, lest you eat and be satiated. 984, 4 lines to the top. Pen tochal v'savata, in case, beware, just in case you eat, you'll be satisfied. Ubatim tovim tivne v'yashavta, you'll build yourself nice houses. Uvekorcha v'tzoncha yirbiyun, you'll have a lot of cattle. V'kesef v'zav yirbelach, you'll have a lot of gold and silver. V'chol asher l'cha yirbe, and everything you'll have is going to increase. So I saw the unfortunately, well, we're talking about a rich person over here. I mean, you have gold and you have silver and you have cattle and you have a big house. I mean, how much more? What else could increase? Because everything you have is going to increase. What else could increase once you've got that? You got gold and silver, you got cattle, you got a home. What are you going to ever get? There were no cars in those days. What else could increase? So I saw it's tongue-in-cheek, but it's very, very true. When a person becomes rich, all of a sudden everything else about him increases too. people talk about, oh yeah, he's so, he could be a smart guy, but oh, he's so wise. He learns Daf Yomi, oh, he's such a Talmid Chacham. Right? Oh, he, once in a while, oh, he got so much Yirah Shemayim too. All of a sudden, everything about him increases. That's the nature of people, right? True or not true? All of a sudden, oh yeah, and he's a great musician also. Because the guy plays the piano. Oh, he's a great clay. Whoa, what a great musician. Because he's rich. It's like a rich guy once said, whereas I used to be considered eccentric, once I became rich, now I'm suddenly delightfully witty. And where I used to be called rude, now I'm called direct. And all of a sudden it changes with rich people. That's why there's I think it's the Orchos Tzadikim, if I'm not mistaken, or the Mesos Sharm. One of them classic Musar Svarim says, if you've ever got a good idea for the community, you want to contribute an idea to the community, it's a good idea for the shul, for the community, for the school, something. Tell it over to a Talmid Chacham or to a rich man and let him present it. Because if you're just an ordinary person, nobody's going to listen to you. A Talmid Chacham, some people will listen to you because they figure you got some of the wisdom of Torah. A rich man, just about everybody's going to listen to you. A rich man walks into, I could guarantee you, if Warren Buffett would walk into this room right now and start talking, everybody be eating up every word he says. So we figure, listen, he must know something. Otherwise, how did he become so rich? So we're all eager to hear. Maybe we'll pick up that nugget of wisdom that it's going to put us on the list also. And even more than that, we all laugh at his jokes. You know how clever they become when a rich man's around? Everything he says, everybody around him is smiling. Everybody's laughing. He's just so witty, so clever. And what you're really hoping is that all of a sudden, while he's talking, he suddenly turns and says, I like you! That's what you're really hoping. I want you to be the junior partner in my business now. What's Warren Buffett's business? Something Hathaway or something? He got the trains or whatever it is. So you understand? It's when a wise man. So that's tongue in cheek, but it's not so tongue in cheek. And that's why the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Ezu Ashir Hasameach B'Chalko. The Mishnah says, who's a wise man? One who's happy with his portion. The plain meaning is that there are different meanings of that Mishnah. Ezu Asher, who's the wise man? Hasameach B'Chalko. What's that?
Rich man.
Who's the rich man?
Yeah.
Hasameach B'Chalko, one who's happy with his portion. Which means most understand that to mean that it really doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're happy with your portion, you're a rich man. No matter how much you have. If you're happy with your portion, you're a rich man. Others say, Ezu Asher, who's the rich man? We're only talking about really rich men now. We're only talking about money rich people. Which rich man can be called a rich man? That he's actually happy with his wealth. As opposed to a poor man where you're not even on the list. You may have a good attitude in life. I wouldn't call you a rich man. If you're living in a two-bedroom apartment in Ezra's Torah with 11 kids, maybe you're happy with your portion. I wouldn't call you rich. We're talking about rich. Who's of the rich people in the world, who's considered really rich? Some rich people in the world are just miserable because there's another rich guy who's got a couple bucks more than them. That's not a rich guy. That's a miserable person. It's not really rich. What's that?
All of them are like that.
Most are, because that's what they live for. They live for the company. Some aren't. Some are okay. Some get to the point where they keep it in proper, but they even laugh at it. They laugh at it. I'll tell you, what's his name? I don't know if you ever heard of the comic strip, Calvin and Hobbes. You ever heard of Calvin and Hobbes? Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The guy earned on the comic strips, the guy who wrote it, he earned on his comic strip about $480 million just on the comic strip. And he was requested over and over multiple times that they should start making other products, little dolls and little cups with logos of Calvin and Hobbes. He would have gone off the charts. And he said, no, I wasn't interested. He said, I don't need the money. And I'm not interested in taking a product which is seen as a high-level product and making it cheap by putting it on in Walmart on a mug. He just wasn't, and he was asked over and over. He would have gone off the charts. Would have gone off the charts without a question. So there are some people who get to the point of how much I need already. There are some people like that, not too many. Most rich people are living for their money and for the competition with other rich people. And that's about part of the test. But I saw one unfortunately says, Ezu Asher Samech B'Chalko. You know what a real rich man is? Be happy with your real portion. You're rich, your real portion is your wealth. Not what people say about you. Oh, he's clever and he's witty and he's got Yirah Shamayim. You know as well as they do that that's not true. Ezu Asher Samech B'Chalko. Be happy with your real portion. The Gemara says there are three. Gemara Pesachim says there are four people who other people can't stand. People can't stand them. They rub us the wrong way. One of them is a dal geya, a haughty poor man. A poor man who struts around like, he's if you're rich and you're haughty, well, you got what to be haughty about. If you're good at something and you're arrogant, somebody told me he once met Shaquille O'Neal. A guy here in the yeshiva told me he interviewed Shaquille O'Neal. So I asked him what was he like. So first of all, he said he put the microphone in his hand. He said his hands were so big, it looked like he put a pea in his hand. That's how big his hands were. I've got a 7'1", and he's just a monster. So I said, what was he like? He said he was actually a pretty nice guy. He said maybe a little arrogant, but then again, he had what to be arrogant about. When you're top-notch, you're a top-notch player, you're very rich. And by the way, Shaquille O'Neal, when he jumped teams, he went from, from Miami to Los Angeles. They offered him. So the day before he left, he said, the trouble with the world is it's too materialistic. He was a philosopher on top of it. He said, the trouble with the world is it's too materialistic. And then the next day he signed a contract of $114 million for 8 years. Guess he didn't have trouble with that materialism, did he? So sometimes you have a bacher once came to Rav Gifter, and he said to him, I got bacher in the yeshiva. He said, Rabbi, I'm having trouble working on my gaiva. I'm having trouble working on my arrogance. So Rav Gifter was Rosh Yeshiva. He looked at me and goes, you? What have you got to be arrogant about? That was humbling. And that took care of that real quick. Good and proud. Sometimes in life the lesson has to be sharp. We don't call it insulting. We call it sharp. Sometimes people, if you potch your child, that's also pretty insulting. Kid needs to be potched. Sometimes people need to be verbally potched. And a Rebbe has to know. There's a halacha that a Rebbe is allowed to embarrass a Talmud. You're not allowed to embarrass anybody. A Rebbe is allowed to embarrass a Talmud if he feels he needs it. And I've heard of Rebbes who have put people. I heard of one Rebbe was giving a shiur, and a guy asked a question, and he said, that's not even a stupid question. Then 10 minutes later, the same guy asked another question. He said, now that's already on the level of a stupid question. Why did he do it? Because he's trying to teach, before you open your mouth, think. You got a shiur. There's a bunch of people standing in a room, and you're blurting out all sorts of drivel. Think before you talk. And sometimes the lesson has to be very whatever. The altar of Slobodka, you've heard of the altar of Slobodka, the original Renaissance Finkel? When he saw a bacher in yeshiva, and a bacher is davening, sometimes you see guys, a young guy is davening like this, he looks like he's on a jungle gym. The altar of Slobodka would walk over next to him and start imitating him. And people would laugh. Till the bacher realized, what do you do? Who are you putting on a show? Because we know you're putting on a show. What, you're already on such a madrega that you're already shaking your fists at HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You ever see sometimes guys davening, they're like this. You better. Be happy with what your real portion is. You got money. So the first guy on the list is a haughty pauper. The second guy on the list is a zaken mina'ef, an adulterous old man, what we would call a dirty old man. So, if you ever see an old man looking at, a poopy magazine or something on his smartphone, and he's looking at poopy pictures, what's your reaction? You're put off by that. What? I don't understand. And to be a dirty young man, that's okay? You think, dirty old man. I never even heard the expression, a dirty young man. You only have an expression, a dirty old man, right? You've heard the expression. Why is that? The answer is because what's that?
All young men are dirty.
Why? We're not dirty. You're normal. Why? Because both he and the poor man are going against nature. By nature, a poor man should be humble. You haven't got what to be arrogant about. You should be contrite. And an old man by nature is already beyond that. A young man isn't, an older man is. So you're still pushing the envelope over there? What's with you? And the third guy on the list is a wealthy man who denies his wealth. That puts us off. We all know you got the bucks, buddy. No, I haven't had such a great year this year. things are tight. Oh, give me a break. Give me a break. He yelled at you out the window of his Lamborghini. Yeah. Einhar nothing. Einhar. We all know you got the money. So Jews are always nervous about Einhar. I told you, when a Jew says, when you say to him, how's business? And he says, okay, that means it was great. When a Jew says business is okay, that means it's great. And if he says good, that means it's sensational. We don't want to overdo it because we're worried about that, the evil eye. But when a guy says, listen, I think I haven't got money, you go ask him for a contribution, for a yeshiva, or for a good cause, and the guy says, well, listen, things are tight, right? Oh, give me a break. I saw a guy once said that. I don't fundraise. Baruch Hashem. But I was once brought into a room with some fundraisers. They wanted me to meet the wealthy guy. The guy's living in a home in Back Lawrence. I drove up to this home. I thought I was driving up to a miniature hotel. We had a meal in the kitchen. We had a meal in his. We had a shalosh shudas in the kitchen for about 40 or 50 people. I was in the kitchen. In my kitchen, 3 people walk in at once. It gets crowded. And then the guy asks him for contribution. He says, "Well, things are a little tight right now." Tight, man. You could sell a wing of your house. Each kid didn't have a room. They had a wing. My first impression when I walked into the house, I was thinking this would be a great place for floor hockey. That's how big the place was. We're happy to have a floor. So those are people who put you off. And therefore the Torah says, keep it in a proper perspective. Now look at Pasuk Yud Dalet.
Well, doesn't it say that when you have wealth, you should be humble?
Yeah, you should be.
Show it off?
Yeah, you should be. But yeah, you shouldn't show it off. You should be contributing it to yeshivas. Yeah, that's exactly correct. What do you need to build? You got 3 kids, and you got 3 kids, and you got a house that could put in a small tribe. And what do you need? You need that for your 3 kids. They never see each other.
This question will probably come off in the wrong way, but I just don't know.
No, go ahead. All's fair in love and.
How does a guy like that say no when somebody comes to ask for a donation?
How does he say no?
He's already given to 10 other yeshivas this year.
Good question. It's an excellent question. It's a very valid question, and it's important.
But he could sell a wing of his house and give to another.
He doesn't have to sell a wing of his house. He shouldn't have built a house to begin with. Now, when a guy, you're asking a very important question. We are only accountable to God. God knows what's going on in our heart. And a guy who's got so much money that he doesn't even know how much money he's got. He can't spend it in 3 lifetimes. This is a guy, you've got a job in life. You also have a job in life. I have a job in life, and you have a job in life, and you have a job in life. And your job is to sit and learn, and my job right now is to teach, and his job is to give tzedakah, because Hashem gave him the bracha of the money. Money's a bracha. Money is inherently a bracha. We daven for money. We don't daven to be poor. It's a bracha. But the same way, when you have a bracha, you've got a responsibility. If you have a good voice, you should be a chazan. The Medrash says that. You have a good voice, be a chazan. Don't slap Hashem in the face. He gave you a gift. Use your voice. Don't torture people in shul by being too much of a chazan. But lead the community, lead the davening, inspire people. You were given a gift. You were given an ability to do something. So HaKadosh gave you the ability to use the ability. If he gave you money, he wants you to use the money properly. And we're going to be accountable, not just rich people. We're accountable for every penny that we spend. After 120 years, did you really need to spend that money? Did you really know? Was that a necessity, or did you cross the line into luxury? And the only one who knows that is you and Hashem. And Hashem said, listen, you had to buy a Jaguar. You couldn't buy a what do you call it? You couldn't buy a Chevy. You couldn't buy what? You had to buy a Jaguar. You had to buy a Lamborghini. You needed a Mercedes. And by the way, guys, my birthday's coming up. If you want to get me something, you can pitch in. I'd like a Mercedes. Green, if possible. It's my favorite color.
Ferrari?
What?
You want a Ferrari?
I mean, if you can, if that's all that's available, I'll deal with it. But I like a Mercedes, good safe car.
Some people
With a chauffeur, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
Some people they don't want to give tzedakah because they believe that the person's collecting, they're not honest with them, and they like.
So the Gemara says two things. The Gemara says that that we have to be grateful to the con artists, because after 120 years, when Hashem says, "Why didn't you give tzedakah?" You say, "Well, there were a lot of liars out there, a lot of what do you call it? A lot of frauds." So at least it'll be a fallback position. But I got news for you. Why should all the genuine people suffer because of the frauds? Why should but some of them are genuine. I would much rather come up after 120 years and Hashem says, you gave a few people that you shouldn't have given to, than that they should say to me there, you didn't give to a few people you should have given to. As we said yesterday, it should be our biggest avera. So the wealthy man, you're right, there's a limit. And maybe he could have hours where people could come in. He can't, others are inundated all day. But he's, saying, listen, he's got, with the privilege goes the responsibility. And you, well, I've given enough. I don't know, you got to hope Hashem says you've given enough. So it's a very, very difficult thing. That's why the test of wealth is, in certain ways, more difficult than the test of poverty. The Vilna Gaon says that a guy who earns $100,000 a year fulfills his obligation of tzedakah, of giving 10%, easier than a guy who's got millions. And many people who have, a group of wealthy men, when was the big hit? In 2008?
Yeah.
2008, a group of very wealthy men, religious men, went to Rav Steinman. And they said to Rav Steinman, why did we gave a lot of tzedakah, why did we take the hit in 2008? A lot of them lost a lot of money. Some of them went bust. And Rav Steinman said to them, well, make a calculation, you'll see that you didn't even give 10%. You gave millions, but you didn't give 10%. You've got this investment and this holding and this thing. It's an important calculation. Now, let's go back here. We'll get to your question in a second. That's part of the answer. Now, the next pasuk is going to answer it. You're going to have a lot, gold, silver, all this stuff. Pasuk Yud Daled, 6 lines from the top. V'ram levavecha, your heart will grow haughty. V'shachachta es Hashem Elokecha, you'll forget Hashem your God, motziacha meretz mitzrayim beis avodim. You're going to forget about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then skip down to Pasuk Yud Zayin, skip down 5 lines, Pasuk Yud Zayin. You're going to forget about Hashem, and you know what you're going to say? Ve'amarta bilvavcha, you're going to say in your heart, Kochi ve'otzem yodi asali esachayal hazeh. It was the strength of my hand and my own abilities that provided for me. That's the danger. The danger, and that's the attitude, the central attitude that we have to get over in life. Kochi ve'otzem yodi. We did it. I did it. I accomplished. I made the money. I accomplished it. And Hashem says, that's where you're haughty. And that's a difficult challenge that everybody with any talent at all, if you're a good soccer player, you have to overcome the feeling of kochi ve'otzem yadi. If you're a great artist, you have to overcome the feeling, and if you're rich, you have to overcome and if you're a chazan with a great voice, you have to overcome the feeling of kochi. It's a very, very difficult challenge. Kochi ve'otzem yadi. I did it. I did it. The minute you say I did it, the minute any element of I, then we've transgressed kochi ve'otzem yadi. I did it. It was me. I did it. That's why the vaunted Israeli army that is always like, we did it. And you can't even stop a female with a knife, and you can't even stop a kid with a bomb, and you can't this is the vaunted army. And every once in a while you get a lesson, you get a little smack. Sometimes you get your head swells up a little bit. You had a success over here, success over there. Let's get it in the proper perspective. The Torah says, you get carried away with yourself. You get a little too full of yourself. That's what the Torah is talking about. Now, take a look at Pasuk Yud Daled. So he says like this. Avram Avinu had the Gemara says that Avram Avinu had a coin. He had he minted a coin. I don't know if it was currency that everybody used, but the Gemara says, what did Avram Avinu's coin look like? And it says that it had the picture of an old man and an old lady on one side of the coin. Coins have pictures on both sides. He had a picture of an old man and an old lady on one side of the coin, and a young man and a young lady on the other side of the coin. And so the Rashi says the old man and the old lady that the Gemara is talking about is obviously Avram and Sarah. The young man and the young lady is Yitzchak and Rivka. That was the coin of Avram Avinu. What was the point of having a coin? What was this coin? What was the idea? The idea is Avram Avinu became a wealthy man. He was a famous man. He was a wealthy man. He was incredibly successful human being. By the way, one of the reasons why Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, why they were very wealthy, this is just parenthetical, but one of the reasons, why were they wealthy? But Hashem blessed them with wealth. One of the reasons was because they were fighting against a pagan world. They were monotheists fighting against a pagan world. And in order to be independent, so they don't have to rely on anybody else, this way you could spread your philosophy without worrying that it's going to hit you in the wallet. That's always a concern, that you're worried that it's going to you're worried that it's going to cost you. So however, they had to be independently wealthy in order to accomplish their goal of spreading Hashem's name in the world. But what did Avram Avinu do? He put a picture of an old man and an old lady on one side of the coin, and a young man and a young lady on the other side, which is Yitzchak and Rivka. Why did he do that? It's a reminder to him that where did he get a Yitzchak to begin with when he and his wife were both old? That clearly wasn't his own doing. That was clearly a result of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intervention, which is going to be a reminder to him that his wealth and his fame and his success and everything else is only coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Medrash says the same thing about Dovid HaMelech. It says Dovid HaMelech, Dovid, the king Dovid HaMelech was the most successful king till his son Shlomo. And Dovid HaMelech also had a coin, currency, a coin. Whether it was one coin or currency, I don't know. But his coin had a picture on one side of a knapsack and what was it called? A knapsack and a stick. Makel v'tarmil. He had like a shepherd's knapsack and a stick on one side. What's it called? What do shepherds walk around? Shepherd's stick. What the stick? What's the stick? A staff. That's it. He had a staff and a knapsack on one side, and a big tower on the other side. Migdal Dovid on the other side. What do you think he was doing it for? It's a reminder where he came from. You started out as a shepherd. He was a shepherd. I had a friend who wanted to be a shepherd. A guy in high school. I said his goal in life was to be a shepherd. He said because then you could lie around in the grass smoking grass. That's what that was his goal. Right. So he managed to stay out of prison. But he what do you call it? So Dovid HaMelech was a shepherd. He had a staff in a way. Why? It's a reminder where he came from. It's a reminder where he came from. And therefore, by the way, Pasuk Yud Daled is the prohibition. V'ram levavcha v'shachachtas Hashem. That's the prohibition to not be arrogant, to not be a Bal Gaiva. And by the way, being a Bal Gaiva doesn't just mean verbally. It means in our own hearts. In our own hearts, we're not allowed to be haughty. And the Torah says you're not. Now, I saw an interesting question. We have the pasuk that we say, Hashem Malach Geus Lavesh. Hashem is the king, clothed in Gaiva, Geus. I don't even know the word in English, but the best word for me, it's a form of the word Gaiva. Hashem is prominent, is lofty. So I saw an interesting question. We're meant to emulate God's traits, right? So if we emulate God's traits, why should we emulate the trait of Gaiva? We should be lofty. We should be haughty. The pasuk says, Hashem Malach Geus Lavesh. Hashem is clothed in haughtiness. So why shouldn't we be haughty? Why shouldn't we emulate? Good question, right? An annoying question. So that's what we call an annoying question, because we all know that we shouldn't. The question is why? Well, why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we be what do you call it? What do you say?
Because we might forget about God in the picture.
Close, very close. Hashem is the only one who could be on the one hand, Geus Lavesh. On the other hand, he could also be merciful and kind. If we become Geus, there's no mercy and kindness. A human being can't balance those two traits. Number one. Number two, the Mefarshim say, that's not a trait of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You look at the 13 attributes of God, Hashem, Kel, Chanun, V'rachu, Merech, Habayim, Merech, it doesn't say Gaiva there. It says, Hashem, Geus Lavesh. He's clothed, he's wearing that mantle. but that's not actually one of his traits, whatever traits of Hashem means. And therefore, we don't emulate Hashem. Now, I want to hit you with a good one. Okay, get ready for this. This is the one I really want to get you. Now I'm going to torture you. In the Medrash, on Pasuk Yud Zayin, where it says Kochi v'Yodi, Asali as Kochi again, Pasuk Yud Zayin, 12 lines from the top. V'amarta bilvavcha, you'll say in your heart, Kochi v'otzem Yodi, Asali as Achayil Hazeh. So the first question is, before I get to the torturous question, the first question is, so why did God give us this inclination of thinking that I can do it, it's me? Why we're even given it? It's a tough test, right? It's a tough test. Why did God even give us that inclination? So Rav Dessler says an interesting approach. Rav Dessler says, you know why we were given that inclination? We're given that inclination to fight against the Yetzer Hara, because that is the only thing that's in our hands. The battle of choosing right or wrong, that is in our hands. And therefore, we're given the trait of feeling I can do it, channeled correctly. Where's that supposed to go? That's supposed to go into the battle against the Yetzer Hara. Where do most people, what's the irony? And when it comes to success in any other area, how are we supposed to feel? Success comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And people live life exactly the opposite. When it comes to material accomplishments, I had an angle. I saw that. And yet, when it comes to battling the Yetzer Hara, person says, "Listen, what can I do? I was born angry. I've got anger. I have a Yetzer Hara. It's not my fault. I'm a victim of natural circumstance," or other fancy expressions, which are only a prelude to Gehenna. But at the end of the day, it's exactly the opposite. When it comes to the Yetzer Hara, that is in our hands. Hakol bidei Shemayim, chutz mi'yirah Shemayim, we're going to see that. And when it comes to fearing God, fighting the Yetzer Hara, that is in our hands. When it comes to material accomplishments, and I told you guys several times, I'm a little older than you, I could tell you that anything in life that has worked out in my favor, that's worked out well, is basically because I got out of Hashem's way. I didn't interfere too much. And anything that's messed up is because I did. Most things that have been successful in my life, and if you ask anybody honest, they'll tell you the same thing, it had very little to do with me. Almost nothing to do with me. It was all only because of Rosh Hashanah. When it comes to shidduchim, people are always making calls shidduchim, people are always involved in finding a shidduch. Ask anybody how their shidduch happened. Usually had nothing to do with them. You called this shadchan, you called this guy, you make calls, you have calls left, right, and center. And at the end of the day, it had nothing to do with you. Guy's driving on the highway and he has a flat tire. And some yeshiva guy stops and he helps him fix his flat tire. And all this guy is thinking is, wow, my daughter's got a roommate in SEM who's looking for a guy that's good with tires. The next thing you know, the shidduch happens. And instead of a ring, he gives her a tire. I've seen it over and over again. I have a friend, a guy that I knew, who was definitely learning. What's it called? Learning challenged. What's the fancy word they use? Not disabled. Not dyslexia. He special ed. He would have needed special ed for sure. And he wasn't particularly good socially. He wasn't particularly good at anything. And today he's a multimillionaire. And the other guys are, the Pasuk in Mishlei says that wealth is not based on smart. A lot of smart people who are borrowing money from a lot of dumb people. And that's the way it works in life. So how did he get successful? I have very little doubt that every investment he made, any expert would have said that's a terrible investment when he made the investment. I have no doubt. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided the investment should work out. And sometimes, if you would have invested a couple of days ago, whose stock just went up 23% overnight? Somebody's stock I just saw went up 23% overnight because of a merger of some sort. You see it too often. The things that work out for you in life had nothing to do with you. You just didn't get in the way too much. You got out of the way and let Hashem run His world. And the things that you messed up in, and people will usually think the opposite. When I was successful, it's because of me. And when I messed up, it doesn't work that way. Okay, now get ready. There's a medrash that says like this.
Is this the torture song?
Yeah, I'm going to torture you now. Right? The medrash says like this. Dovid HaMelech, there were 4 kings. The medrash says there were 4 kings. Dovid HaMelech said to Hashem, Erdof ve'asigem. Let me help me, Hashem. I want to chase the enemies and catch them, and I'll kill them. And Hashem helped Dovid HaMelech. King Asa said, I want to chase them, but I want you to kill them. I'll chase, you do the rest. King Yehoshaphat said, I can't even do that. I'll just sing praises, and you chase them and do everything. And King Chizkiyahu said, I'm going to stay in bed. I want you to do the whole thing. I'm not even going to sing. 4 kings. Question. Which of these 4 kings is the highest level of bitachon? Who's got the greatest trust in God?
Third one.
Why the third one who's singing? Why is he better than the guy who's sleeping and staying in bed?
It's an effort, just not in the material.
And the guy is staying in bed?
He's not doing the effort even.
He's not even doing effort, so who's got greater bitachon?
It's not only based on.
His bitachon, well, listen, I'm going to sing, and we're going to take out the Iranian nuclear reactor. Ta-da! Most people in the world would say, listen, we'd rather have the nuclear than Kaplan singing. I understand. But and if I say to you, you know what, I'm just going to go to sleep, and we'll take out the nuclear reactor. Which one is a higher level of bitachon? The other is singing, at least is something. Here he's doing nothing. Who's got the greatest level of bitachon, Azriel?
The one who is sinning because he's directing his efforts towards God.
The one who's singing?
Yeah.
Why is he better? Why is he better than Dovid HaMelech, and why is he better than the guy who's sleeping? What happened to you
Because
guys?
the guy who is sleeping might just say, oh, it happened due to natural circumstances.
He said, Hashem, I'm going to sleep and you do it. The other one says, Hashem, I'm going to sing and you do it. Who's putting in more effort? Well, that depends who's sleeping. I don't know what it takes for you to sleep, Shai. Most people, it doesn't take that much effort. I trust you guys that you're good at it without effort. You can do it effortlessly, even in sheer. So what do you call it? Who's putting in greatest? Who's got the highest level of bitachon?
The guy that's going in because he's the one that's trusting that he's not going to.
He's not going to get killed.
Yeah.
I mean, if you stay in bed and say, please Hashem, they're bombing us, protect me, that's no great shakes either.
He's doing.
Sancheirib was attacking. Chizkiyahu HaMelech was lying in bed. You're close though. The highest level, most think, Bensi, that the highest level of bitachon over here is Chizkiyahu. I'll lie in bed and you do it all. That's a pretty good level of bitachon. Trusting God completely. Reb Moshe Feinstein says it's exactly the opposite. The highest level of bitachon was Dovid HaMelech. Please Hashem, I want to chase them and I want to kill them. What's the challenge? If you chase and you kill, you could easily feel, I did it. Dovid HaMelech is on such a high level of bitachon, he could actually go stabbing people, and he knows that it's 100% Hashem. That's the highest level of bitachon. King Asa says, listen, I'm not at that level. I could chase them, but if I start stabbing them, and I'm going to get the big eye is going to get involved. And King, Yehoshaphat says, I can't even do that. I can sing. If I sing and you kill them, I know it's all you. If I even chase them, then I got myself involved. And King Chizkiyahu says, I can't do anything. Otherwise, I'll think it's me. I have to stay in bed. So who's got the highest level of bitachon? This is Dovid HaMelech. That's the challenge in life. The challenge in life is, my father once said to me when I was a kid, my father was a very wise man. I was about 9 years old. And my father said to me at one point, I did a lot of talking. I was like talking loud. They were always like, shh, shh, no, shh. My wife did that when we first got married too.
Didn't you give up?
I was wondering. I flattered myself that I got better, but you're probably right. You probably did give up. What do you call it? It's like this woman says to her friend, listen, after 20 years of chew with your mouth closed, say please, say thank you, use a napkin, I'm finally finished with my husband. Now I can start working on the kids. So what do you call it? So my father once said to me, try not to use the word I so often when you talk. Try to leave the word I out of your vocabulary. So I remember thinking to myself, but how am I going to talk about myself if I don't say the word I? I wasn't the sharpest knife in the kitchen. How am I going to talk about myself without using the word I? So that's human nature. It's I. Here the Torah is talking about get the I out of accomplishment. And therefore Dovid HaMelech has the ability, it's like anything else, you know, take a professional athlete, because that's the only real reality in life anyway, is sports. An athlete who's a great athlete, and he scores goals and he's making all that money, and he has to keep in mind constantly that the ability that he has only is because God gave him the ability. He can't deny the fact that he's got the ability that we're not meant to deny abilities. That's not our job to deny the ability. To the contrary, if you've got an ability and it can be channeled in a positive way, you use the ability. But that no one should think, it's like a guy once told me, this guy's a rich guy is sitting in a restaurant with his friend. And he says, I'm so rich. I'm so rich. You know, no one can take my wealth away from me. No one, there's no way for me to lose my wealth. No one can take my wealth away from me. And just then the cheeky waiter passes by and says, yes, but you can be taken away from your wealth. So a person who's a great voice, all of a sudden one day he wakes up, he's hoarse. All of a sudden one day he wakes up and he can't sing. His voice, he's got a problem with his voice. I told you there was a baseball player, Kirby Puckett, who woke up one morning and he had blurry vision. He's a great player, great hitter, great fielder, great everything. He woke up one morning and he had blurry vision in one of his eyes. He told out he had glaucoma. Had to quit, couldn't play. And overnight, Hashem could take it away overnight. So a person, that's a job. Not to deny the ability, to realize the ability was given us. By the way, that what I said to you about Rav Dessler, it's a very interesting thing. But I said to you about Rav Dessler, that we're given a certain characteristic, a certain tendency. Our job is to use the tendency in the right, to use it in the right direction. The tendency of I can do is meant to be used against the Yetzer Hara. So I heard Rav Nosson Wachtfogel, he was the Mashgiach of the Lakewood Yeshiva. Why is it, I don't know if you guys are sports fans or not, if you're not, you should be, but why is it that grown men could talk about a football game or a baseball game like they're solving the world's problems? You ever see two guys analyzing, wow, did you see that on third down? I can't believe he called that. You know, and if your team loses or wins, you know, it's like earth-shattering. Where's that coming from? The interest, the general interest in sports, where does that come from? Rav Mendel Weinbach, that's all. He told us once, he was in Torah Vadas. He said the guys interested in money, they all became businessmen. The guys interested in chess, they all became lawyers. The guys interested in sports, they all became Rosh Yeshivas. Because no Jewish kid really thinks that he's got a career waiting for him in professional sports. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And maybe he'll be an agent, make more money than any of the athletes.
Yeshiva University, this guy's a basketball player.
Yeah,
Jewish guy.
yeah. The one guy from Yeshiva University, one Jewish guy from Yeshiva University who nobody's ever going to hear from again after he graduates. Yeah, shkoyach. So,
He's going into the NBA.
yeah. What's his points per game average?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I do.
What is it?
With a lot less than my test scores in high school, that I could tell you. And you got to be pretty low to be there, that I could tell you. I was another great Jewish basketball player. I was also a great basketball player in high school. So I came down on the side of my foot, another in a series of sprained ankles. So I called my parents had to drive me to the hospital. My father had about enough because, you know, this was not the first time that they were driving me for x-rays. And I'm lying in the back of the car moaning and groaning. And my father just goes, you're short, you're slow, and you're white. Take off golf, will you? I should have. At least you get paid when you golf. At Ohr Somayach, you don't get paid. So the volunteer work. So the what do you call it? So the Torah is telling you that you have the ability. So Nosson Wachtfogel asked, So where does that interest come? What a disproportionate interest. And so even my father will show whenever when I was a kid, and by me, I pored over the box scores and the statistics, and he said to me, the line is, do it, watch the game, play the game, watch the game, but as soon as you finish watching the game, if your mood is affected negatively, that's too much. It ends when the game is over. Yell, scream, do whatever you want to do. Game's over, that's it, get on with life. That's the line. Where's that coming from? So Yeshivat Ohr said, very interesting insight into human nature. We are created to fight. We have an innate tendency to fight. Against whom? The Yetzer Hara. We're born to fight the evil inclination. If you mischannel it, which many do, in the worst scenario, what does it become? It becomes war. Most wars in history didn't need to be fought. I don't know what they're fighting about. They're fighting for 4 years, and they're like, gee, what are we fighting about over here? And if it is one thing we've learned from history, it's that we haven't learned anything from history. Because wars, what are you fighting for? If it's not in war, it's competition. What's the competition? Either we compete on the basketball court, or we compete by watching. This is my team. This is my team against your team. I could brag about my players, you could brag about your players. It's all the same tendency. It's a tendency to compete. And the real competition is meant to be against the Yetzer Hara. That's the real enemy. And if we mischannel it, so it's going to go somewhere else. Says Rav Dessler, this ability, this tendency of I could accomplish, I could do, is in one area only. We could do, that we have to do. And that's when choosing right over wrong. That is up to us. Akol bidei shamayim chutz miyira shamayim. But when it comes to, when it comes to accomplishments and money and any accomplishments, that's not in our hands. That's only the Rebbeinu Shalom. All right.